I didn't grow up liking Five Nights at Freddy's. I like it now, but despite being the age of teen who would have been watching Markiplier or Game Theory in 2014, Five Nights at Freddy's blew past me like a hot wind on a hot day. Barely felt. Not thinking that jump scares were interesting, not knowing that there was truly compelling lore underneath it all, I glanced at it for a sec, said, "Not for me," and moved on. In the back of my mind, I knew it was another Amnesia, another Slender, another flash-in-the-pan indie horror darling. And then, just 2 years later, the Walmart shelves are full of pegs upon pegs of animatronic mascots by Funko, the Jared Leto's Joker of toy companies. A month later, my then-girlfriend's little child siblings are in the van, singing every single word of the Living Tombstone Five Nights at Freddy's song. You know, the one about being a dead child ghost trapped in an animatronic mascot costume, alone and miserable. That one, being sung by the children of a somewhat repressive Christian family. That dissonance has never left me. Years after that, I'm an adult, and I'm getting a bit closer to some new adult friends of mine, people a bit older than me, actually, and I learn they've been into Five Nights at Freddy's since it came out, and they're deeply into it still as longtime horror fans. And yet, when it comes up, they speak about it as if it's cringe, in hushed tones and subtle nods. Like there's something shameful about being into a scary, dark, mature horror series for adults just because there are too many children who are now into it. What's happening here? What is this franchise? Is FNAF for kids? And if it's not, my god, why are they selling giant Freddy Fazbear Head mystery toy bundle with lights and sounds? Look at this guy! Tell him your sins! Hi, I'm Jett, and either FNAF was always for kids, or it was never for kids, or it used to be for adults, but there's been a slow process of infantilization as more and more kids have gotten into it. Or maybe some mysterious fourth thing. It's a mangled up, tangled up knot where themes and tone clash with demographics and capitalistic intent. A knot that I intend to untangle as long as you stick with me. So please, fight your withering attention span and watch this video to the end. People tend to decide their opinions halfway through my videos, but this is nuanced and I'm gonna be testing out a lot of different angles on the issue. Watching the video explains the video, so stay tuned.
Something is not right. Someone must have changed the permissions.
There are two major things happening with FNAF right now. One is the release of Secret of the Mimic, the newest game by Steel Wool Studios, the same people that made FNAF Security Breach, and the very company that many fans point to as a marker of FNAF becoming a kids franchise. In contrast to Security Breach, however, the new game is a lot scarier. Or at least, it's a lot darker compared to Security Breach. It's getting a lot of praise as a return to form for the franchise. Oh, look, there's a corpse over there! Oh, and another one over there! Ah, scary corpses! Corpses are scary! I like the game so far, but I'm not totally convinced. The second thing happening is, the Funko FNAF toy line has come to an end this year. For the first time since 2016, the shelves are no longer packed with ambiguously child-marketed bear collectibles, and may soon be packed with biguously child-marketed bear collectibles. Jazzwares is taking over the mainline toy license, just as Steel Wool has taken over game development. Where Funko is more known for shovelware adult collectibles, Jazzwares makes Fortnite action figures, Squishmallows, Cocomelon, and controversy! We're not gonna talk about that. Jazzwares is putting out fully posable, glowing eyes, squeeze me for sounds and motion Freddy Fazbear. Jazzwares wants to make play sets of the FNAF locations. There's something of a shift in focus happening, and I find toys to be a surprisingly good metric of what a brand's focus really is. Toys are where an amorphous internet thing becomes a real, physical, morphous thing. To make merch, a creator has to make very intentional calls about brand image, brand demographics, brand goals, and so on. The fact that toys are, and have always been, such a huge part of FNAF's merch push, it's a telling angle, perhaps now more than ever. Looking at the vibrance and friendliness of games like Security Breach, the PG-13 rating of the movie, Jazzwares, it seems there's a trend of aiming younger. But if FNAF's biggest demographic has always been kids, and they've always been making money off of kids with the toys, has it ever really not been for kids? And what does that even mean for a horror franchise? Let's explore.
It is not a safe play area.
The wider world's view of FNAF is an ambiguous mess nowadays. It's a sloppy combo of a dozen tones and ideas, but once upon a time, the cultural narrative was simple. Five Nights at Freddy's was, without question, a horror game for adults. Things made for kids can be a bit scary to adults, so let's make a thing that looks like it's for kids, but it'll be creepy, and so adults will be scared of it. The first game is a uniquely frightening experience, with a dark storyline that's darker than most franchises are ever willing to go. And Balloon Boy is there. The whole original run of the series is about the ghosts of children who were serially murdered in a Chuck E. Cheese, returning to possess the animatronic band and commit hate crimes. I do not believe that Scott Cawthon, creator of the series, thought young kids would ever play the game. If Timmy and Tammy were to play the game, I doubt they'd be able to sleep that night, much less successfully manage its many complex systems well enough to survive and actually have fun. But I don't think Timmy and Tammy were playing the games. YouTubers were. Kids watched YouTubers jumped on the up-and-coming cash cow, and through that, a macabre obsession spread across the world's babiest babies. Some may consider this inherently a bad thing, or at least sketchy, and then I gotta get out of the road, because I'm gonna get hit by a car. I'm not so convinced. Despite the dark themes and dark ideas, there is little to no on-screen violence in the Scott Games FNAF series, and what is there is only implied or impressionistic. Many say that the minimal presence of blood and gore is a choice meant to make things scarier, because implied violence allows you to fill in the blanks yourself with your own frightening mind. And while I think that's true in practice, I also think it's because Scott Cawthon was a squeamish little Christian boy. Not that there's anything wrong with that, same. Scott Cawthon started his career making Christian adventure games and animations, glorifying Christ in the digital age. Then people told him that his character models look like terrifying Uncanny Valley animatronics, and he thought,
I'll steal ideas!
Five Nights at Freddy's was born. But I don't think Cawthon was willing to make it explicitly, terribly on-screen violent, coming right off the back of his prior career. He basically said as much in an interview with a Christian geek website. Why not?
How did your Christianity translate into Five Nights at Freddy's? Are there any hidden Christian messages? For example, do the animals represent a vice or struggle?
No, Five Nights at Freddy's is just a simple horror game, although I did try to keep it relatively clean with no blood or guts.
Scott does not talk about his intended audience in this interview, and earlier comments show that he didn't really think that anyone should be engaging with particularly gruesome media, at least not without a lot of prayer. Does that mean that these things, exhibits A, B, C, and so on, seem particularly clean to Scott? And while Security Breach had nothing even approaching gore, save from an in-text mention of Vanny getting disassembled, maybe Burn Trap counts, but are zombies inherently gore? I don't think so, especially if they're just a dude made by another dude, somehow pretending to be a third dude, retroactively. Secret of the Mimic has straight-up corpses in it. Dead bodies, on screen, with flies buzzing around. Not exactly gore, but less impressionistic than anything in the franchise prior to now. Kids' horror is not a totally novel concept. Goosebumps exists. R.L. Stine is doing his thing. But most Goosebumps stuff is like, aw geez, Tommy, when I wished for a snow day so I could skip school, I didn't think the evil snowman would melt my mom. Obviously, FNAF goes a lot harder than that, especially visually, but while the Goosebumps show was spooky, it stayed bright and colorful 80% of the time. Kids' horror flirts with the darkness, but rarely lives in it, how FNAF does. Do you like my fake FNAF security camera gimmick thing that I'm doing for this one? Well, joke's on you, it's not fake! These are real security cameras that I actually have now. The Track Mix outdoor security camera is made by RioLink, a leader in smart home security. Wait, come back! The video's not over yet. There's a lot more to talk about. I just have to discuss this security camera for a minute. And you know what? I'll make some FNAF jokes throughout it. You don't want to miss out on that, do you? Don't you fear missing out? The Track Mix has a lot of features that I want you to hear about, but not just because it's an advertisement, but because they're cool. And if Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria had these cameras, we wouldn't have a game. It wouldn't be a game series. There wouldn't be a problem. First, it's got 2 lenses, a wide and a telephoto, that when they detect motion, track the person and alert your phone. Both views are viewable from one screen on the RioLink app, anywhere you go. Works in any way you can imagine. For total 360 security solutions. Leave me alone! Second, if there's areas of the frame with roads and stuff, or areas you don't want detected for privacy reasons, you can customize motion zones to decide what will and what won't alert you. It's very customizable, capable of telling what's a person, what's a pet, what's a car, all to send you the most accurate possible alerts. Third, it's got a built-in speaker and microphone that you can use to converse live with visitors. Like this.
Goodness gracious me.
You can be this guy and tell solicitors to leave. It's just like Five Nights at Freddy's 3! Fourth, night vision modes, with built-in infrared lights for proper night vision, or you can turn on the built-in spotlight and scare the absolute snot out of people by getting on the mic in the app and going or whatever you want to do. You can even get a solar panel for the camera, which solves all of those pesky, power-draining pizzeria issues. I don't know, man. I think it's really good. I love it. It's such a cool gadget, and it's a genuine security tool, which gives me so much peace of mind in this increasingly strange world. Your surveillance state? My surveillance state. Right now is the RioLink Prime Day sale, where you can get your security solutions at the most unbeatable prices of the year. Check out RioLink's security products on Amazon with up to 50% off by clicking the link in my description. Back to the topic at hand. Basically, the joke of FNAF was that it was a kids thing that had been all twisted up and spookified. And yet, it turns out, kids do not care if something is scary. In fact, they seem deeply drawn to dark horror and dark subject matter. I know I was. I always thought that made me a weird kid, but no. It was all the other stuff that made me a weird kid. Stir in the draw of the macabre, together with bright, colorful mascots that would appeal to kids anyway, and my god, apparently that's a winning formula for a still-growing mega-franchise. FNAF was never specifically for kids, but it seems impossible to satirize and lampoon the tropes of kids' media without just making media that kids really like anyway. God save Gooseworks, she's doing her best. Did Scott somehow anticipate this phenomena and made sure to keep the violence implied because of it? To protect the children? Stumbling onto a winning formula because of it? These are interesting questions, but I question their questionable premise, because they assume that gore is the only thing that makes something inappropriate for children. It's a series about a man putting on a friendly mascot costume, making a place that parents would think is safe, then luring children into the darkness. You know, for the murdering. Isn't the franchise itself at risk of doing basically the same thing? harming children with intense content, all while presenting a family-friendly outer facade? If we look at the original Steam page, I'd say no. The game's presentation made itself very obvious. Look at this trailer, and its music, and its lighting. At a mere glance, there is no shot a parent wouldn't clock this as an intense, nightmare-inducing horror game. Not quite so obvious with Security Breach, or even with Secret of the Mimic. And then my mind thinks back to the toys.
You sure collected a lot of toys.
I won't argue that all toys are only for kids. In fact, I'd be the last person capable of making that claim without getting beheaded for treason. And I'll grant them this. The original packaging was dark and uncolorful in the vein of high-end action figures. They even said on the back, not a toy. Hear that, 5-year-old boy whose grandma bought this from Amazon? Don't play with this. The fine print says so. Except, in some of the later editions of these very same figures, they seem to have removed the part that says not a toy? Huh, that probably doesn't mean anything. There's usually a section of any big box store where high-end collectible action figures are put. And that's where any wise retailer would put the FNAF... Wrong! They go between the Beyblades and the Robloxes, idiot! Funko might have made the packages dark, but they didn't make them horror-themed enough for a retailer to care or even notice. And that's to say nothing about the extended universe of other merch, each item cuter and friendlier than the last. Not that adults can't enjoy cute and friendly stuff, but do they have no sense of irony when they're making this stuff? A parent isn't gonna know that Timmy and Tammy are asking Santa for psychopath Shaggy with kill you in the storage closet action. They're gonna wax nostalgic about HR Puffin stuff, toss the mascot into the cart, then come back later to see Sharper Than Your Average Bear at the top of the next wave. One glance at the Amazon reviews for any FNAF toy, including the original Funko action figure line, you'll see about 30% collectors reviewing the quality, 30% parents complaining the toys fall apart easily because Funko made them, and 40%, my grandson loves this adorable bear.
My boy loves this guy right now.
Our grandson likes these Five Nights of Freddy figures. 5 stars.
Easy to put them together. These are so adorable. My son really likes them. I have ordered the whole collection. It is so cute.
Thank you so much. You have no clue how happy you made my baby boy.
My nephew absolutely loved this when I got it for him.
Well-made character FNAF figure. My grandson loves collecting these, and this is a well-made character. Good value and arrived quickly.
Exactly as pictured. A good strong quality for kids. Super fast shipping.
Kids love these characters, but as a parent, not so much. Their arms and legs are constantly coming off. Plus, they are a little creepy.
Yeah, I sure hope it does.
I mean, come on. They're making stuff that can't possibly be from the games just to pad out the toy line. Orville Elephant, L-Chip, Freddy Frostbear. It's like the Batman toys where they put out endless recolors just to sell more toys, whether or not such a costume was ever in the media. Ice Blade Batman? Come on, he would never wear that. And there would never be a Freddy Frostbear. They're from Pizzeria Simulator? Freddy Frostbear is also from the games? At a certain point, with these kinds of products and this kind of shelf placement, there's an admission being made that kids are now an accepted and desired demographic. If you're intentionally opening up new avenues to make money off of kids, kids are officially part of your demo. Unlike what I'd expect from the early games themselves, which are paywalled on Steam, Scott has surely made an absolutely bonkers amount of money from selling children soft effigies of the Slaughter Bear. Does Freddy Frostbear add to the artistic value of Five Nights at Freddy's AR:special delivery? Or is he only in the game so that they can make money off of toys?
Please do more skins of the animatronics, like for Halloween, Easter. Just that Freddy Frostbear looks so good, guys. I love how he's holding an icicle.
I'm pretty sure that the absurd amount of new animatronics in Pizzeria Simulator is part of the sort of self-aware consumerist satire that pervades that game, but it's a bit undercut when you turn around and make bank off the never-ending new supply of yet more child-friendly looking toys. The question is not whether FNAF is a dark and mature horror series being marketed at kids. We're past that. It is. The question is, and has always been, is that an okay thing to do? I'm confident that Scott would say yes. People on the FNAF subreddit poked him a while ago about the apparent contradictions about his Christian blog interview and the subsequent violence featured in the series.
What the heck, Scott?
And here's what he had to say in response.
Is this really what the subreddit has turned into? Just 100 threads demanding that I explain myself?
Well, you did contradict what you said in that Geeks Under Grace interview.
Listen, I appreciate your timid heart, but this is a horror franchise. Either you need to toughen up a bit or go find a more child-friendly game to play. Edit. But seriously, compare this series to most other games out there. This is still very, very mild stuff. I really do try to keep it PG and to stay true to what I said in the interview.
Scott Cawthon, whatever your opinion of him may be, is not a hypocrite about this point. He bribed his own children, however old they may or may not have been, to playtest the early builds of FNAF.
After I'd animated, I was letting my two sons play it, and I was getting to, watch the, I had a good seat behind both of them, so I was able to get a good view of them playing and what they were playing and everything. Good times tormenting the children.
He may not have made these games for kids. He may not have made those toys for kids. But while he was in charge, while he was the developer, Scott basically said, yeah, it's for kids. Yeah, it's a horror franchise. Yeah, people die. And yeah, it's still PG. Scott says, toughen up. Get over it. And then Scott let Steel Wool Studios take over. And instantly their version of the franchise is more childish, more friendly, and more approachable than ever before. Because they know what their biggest demographic actually is, and they're willing to pander to it in a way that Scott never was. And I believe that is a very, very big mistake.
Perhaps we can do something to stop whatever is going on here.
For the record, I really quite like Security Breach, but not for the reasons that the original series was great. Glamrot Freddy is a great character and all, and there's nothing out of line about turning your titular villain into the titular helper of the hero. You know, Terminator 2 and Alien vs. Predator. It's an old trope, and it's a great one. The FNAF movie similarly leans into the sympathetic qualities of the animatronics, letting Springtrap shine as the true bad guy. It's not bad storytelling, but when this happens to a franchise, it's always symptomatic of new creatives wanting the iconic characters who kids around the world love to not be horribly murdering people for no reason. Godzilla has gone through every possible version of this cycle, and for the most part, I like it. There's a void of scary media that a broad demographic can watch. There aren't enough movies that you can put on during Halloween without having the spooky, whimsical mood gummed up by genuinely disturbing horror or gore. And if letting Freddy Fazbear be a lovable, iconic hero rather than is what it takes for the rest of the franchise to stay scary, I'll take it. As for Secret of the Mimic, it's darker in tone and darker in imagery. There's more horror to it, and yet there's an unshakable sense that the horror is largely aesthetic rather than mechanical. Scott's games were easy on the gore, which let them go absolutely crazy with mechanics built from the ground up to terrify you, to force you to panic, to put dread into your bones. These games scared adults. These games scared Scott himself when he was making them. And Secret of the Mimic has the trappings, but it still feels like it pulls its punches constantly in areas where it would be so easy to insert dread. I do think they don't want to risk harming what they know is a very large demographic of children. So, in the end, I don't envy the position of building Mimic into something that everyone might want. I'm sure it was difficult to put the pieces together. It's not the end of the world. The infantilization of Freddy Fazbear himself is simply what franchises do with their icons. And Mimic is a couple steps in the right direction, though not as many steps as I'd like, but I digress. It's in the best interest of the kid demographic for them to not tone it down. I truly believe that FNAF grabbed kids and young adults both, in part, by not alienating either half of its demographic, young or old. Scott kept these demographics very carefully in balance, avoiding things like terrible gore or sexual violence, keeping much of the really dark stuff subtextual or buried behind lore, while trusting that those who should get it will get it. There aren't enough franchises that treat kids with the maturity that they deserve. Stuff like R.L. Stine is good, but in the shows at least it almost always felt like a kid's series, and FNAF doesn't. And FNAF shouldn't. There's a continued risk that, as the franchise grows and more creatives get control, they'll go, oh, kids like this? Well, then we need to make it kid-friendly, for kids. And that'd be a tragedy. We need less goosebumps, and more scary stories to tell in the dark. Things that draw kids in, with a darkness that they can digest, because the world is dark. Things are scary, and they need to learn to process that. That's why they're drawn in. Their brains are wired to test their own limits. When you make their world into a padded room, they'll climb the walls to see how far they have to fall before it hurts. When you don't give kids the agency to engage with a darkness you know, they'll be drawn all the same to a darkness that you don't. They'll find it somewhere that you can't control, and you will have no idea what's waiting for them inside. Thanks to RioLink for sponsoring this video. This is Jett, and I'll see you next time. Thank you to my Diamond patrons LUCID, LANA, CHOOKA Bear, and RAZU RION, my Titan patrons Sierra 107, Gusano, Banana Jones, Chell, and Douglas Fern, my Hyper patrons Trouble, Mudorios, Orio, Alyssa Gretlein, Mannsky, Plecopleco, Forrest DC, HeartlineDai, Kevin Haji, Sam Caesar, James 7T, and Hateincarnate. God, there's a lot of you people. Oh, and new base patron Joseph E. Thanks for supporting. If you want to do the same, go to patreon.com/JettCuso, and it'll actually help out the channel a lot.